Hello everyone! In this video we're going to be testing the input latency of the Retroid Pocket 5. This has been by far the most requested feature that I've had on any video so far. So in order to test this I have a few methods. I'm going to use the Android Gamepad Tester and I'll measure the difference in time between when I push a button and when it registers on the screen. I'll do this for every button 4 times and I'll give you the average measurement in milliseconds. I'll then also try a couple of games where input latency is important and I'll report back to you how it feels. That way you get both sides of the coin. The actual raw data in milliseconds and also my personal opinion of how it feels to play in the hands. So without any further ado, let's get into it. I filmed myself pushing each button at 240 frames per second. I then counted how many frames there were between pushing the button and it registering on the screen. From my calculation, there was an average of around 7 frames between pushing the button and it registering on the screen. If my calculations are correct, this would mean there is an input latency of around 29 milliseconds, which when looking back on an old Taki Udon video from a few years ago, is much better than the old Retroid Pocket 2. Which had around 66 milliseconds of latency. Now, I am definitely not an expert in this area. This is something that I'm usually not too concerned with, but at least for me, it seems quite acceptable. And now we're going to see it in action in games, and I'll tell you how it really feels in the hands, which for me personally is far more important than the statistics. Our first game is Rhythm Heaven Fever. This game actually comes with a built-in input tester. When you start the game, it actually makes you test how well you can keep in time with the music. If there's a problem with the input latency on this device, I'm surely going to fail, or I'll at least feel that something is a bit off. So we're going to run through the test together and see how well I can do. This game, by the way, if you're curious, runs at a very smooth 60 frames per second. So here we have the rhythm test. It will show whether I'm early, late, or on time. This should theoretically be a good way to test the input latency. I majored in music at university, so my musical timing should be pretty decent. I'm not the best timekeeper in the world, but I should be at least close to accurate if the device can hold up. So this should be a good first test of the input latency. So are you ready to start the rhythm test? Yes. So I'm going to press A in time with the signal. Dun, 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 dun. So if I press in time when I hear it, it's actually a little bit early. So by being early, that tells me there's definitely not any kind of lag happening. I'm probably just pushing the button a little bit too early. If there was a lot of latency, we should expect me to push the button when I hear the sound and for it to come down late. So as the game says, if you have a lot of marks above the center line, like all of mine are, it means you're pushing the button a bit early. So that definitely means there's not any significant input latency here. Okay, so we're going to try this one more time, but this time it will be more difficult because they will stop playing the sound. I have to count the sound in my head and push the button. Okay, that one was perfect. Perfect again. Now we're not going to see until it's done. So let's see the result of my test. And oh, I am all over the place. So my timing is not good. But there is no clear trend of falling below the line that would indicate that there is some kind of latency going on here. There are as many above the line as below, so that just seems like a weakness on my own timekeeping. I believe that if there was a real latency problem, everything would be falling below the line. The fact that as many of them are as early as late shows that there is no real issue with the device. But let's move on to another game and let's test the latency further. Our next game is PaRappa. This is a game that I had never even heard of before, but somebody in the comments recommended I try it to check the latency. So in this game, we need to push the buttons in time with the rhythm. So again, this will check whether the Retroid Pocket 5 can keep the timing correct. This game feels like there's a little bit of a delay. So I'm going to move on to another game and compare how that feels. Getting into the actual game of Rhythm Fever, there is no issue at all with playing the game. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I can get hole in one after hole in one. For a game like this, there's definitely no problem with the input latency whatsoever. And I've not really felt the input latency on any game yet, except PaRappa. So you can see that game runs really well. Let's move on to another game. Let's pick up the pace a little bit with Dance Dance Revolution. This game is all about keeping in time, and we can choose our characters from Johnny, Consento, Astro, or Rage. Let's be Rage. So we'll get into the game and we'll see if I can keep in time with the Retroid Pocket 5. Perfect, good, 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 almost, So if I'm going to try to push the button when it's right in the middle and it says almost. If I push it a little bit before it's in there, it's much better, which might suggest a little bit of latency. Yeah, in order to get this perfect, I need to push it a little bit before it gets into the shape. And I'm not sure if that's the latency from the RP5 or the usual behavior of this game. But what I can say is, as you're watching, it's definitely not an unplayable experience. You can see I'm getting a lot of great and perfect scores, so definitely the latency is absolutely fine. I do notice that it registers a little bit after I press it, but I'm not sure if that's an issue with the game or the latency, but I'm certainly not having any problems playing the game. So now let's move on to another game in a similar style. And I think I might be the only person in the world who ever actually paid money to buy this game. Yes, this is Pop Idol UK. This is a game I had a demo of as a kid, and I wanted the game so desperately that I got my dad to call various stores around the country, and we ended up having to drive more than an hour to go and pick it up. Nobody had it in stock because I think nobody wanted it. But I loved it, it's a great memory for me, and it is a rhythm game, so let's see if we can keep in pace on the Retroid Pocket 5. Also, every loading screen has Simon Cowell on it. We've got a really nice collection of classic ballads, which I'm sure will all definitely be copyrighted, so unfortunately we're not going to be able to listen to them together, but it's okay, because I will sing it for you! My loneliness is killing me, and I... So as the icons fly through the screen, it's working absolutely fine. I'm getting cool, good, great, I'm even getting some perfect scores. I'm definitely having no problem with the latency whatsoever on this game. I will say even in dance mode it is pretty slow. But again, another rhythm game that is based purely on your timing, there are no issues with this whatsoever. It's working very well. You can see my final result. I messed up once, I messed up a little bit once, I had none that were in the middle, I had 9 that were great, and 31 that were pretty much perfect. So I think this is a pretty good representation that the latency on this device is pretty good. But let's not stop there, because now we have the GOAT rhythm game, PaRappa The Rapper. This to me is the ultimate rhythm game. This is legendary. If I can run this in time, the latency is good enough for me. Okay, after testing this for a while, it seems that the timing of the game is completely broken. It's nothing to do with the Retroid Pocket 5, it just seems like the game doesn't match the music whatsoever. I searched online and I found lots of other people with the same issue with this particular game. As we play, it doesn't seem to match at all. So I don't think this actually turned out to be a very good test. Overall, from my testing, it seemed that the games were very responsive, and before I read all of the comments asking me to check the input, it honestly wasn't something that even crossed my mind, because in every game I played so far, I haven't noticed any input lag issues whatsoever. Whether it's old SNES games, NES games, whether it's new games on new mythical consoles, I've not noticed any problems with input latency, and after testing these rhythm games as well, I would say they're all perfectly playable on the RP5. So I hope this video helped any of you who had concerns about input latency. If there's anything more you think I should do to test the input latency, please let me know and I will go ahead and do that. But for now, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe and I'll see you again very shortly for another video on the RP5. Thank you very much.